Hi, I'm Alexi, welcome to Alexis Guitars. Now a few weeks ago I bought myself this Wilkinson bridge. It's got compensated brass saddles and I wanted to upgrade my Tele Partscaster. At the moment I've got this super cheap bridge I bought from eBay or Amazon years ago and I really don't like it. It's been annoying me for years. For starters, it doesn't feel good against your palm when you're playing, and also the bridge saddles need to be as far forward as possible in order for this to intonate. Also, all the other important bits of hardware on this have been upgraded. Up here we have Harley Benton locking tuners, which I really like, Graphtec string trees, Graphtec nut. I've refretted the neck myself, and these pickups are awesome. They're the Seymour Duncan £1/4 set. This bridge is letting the team down and needs to go. So I'm super excited to upgrade it to this Wilkinson bridge. Now I've never tried a traditional 3-piece Telecaster bridge before, and I'm really interested to see whether I notice any difference with the brass saddles. Now I was expecting a little bit of DIY when installing this bridge, but the most I was expecting to do was to refill the holes, the screw holes for this bridge, and redraw new ones to fit this one. But I then took off this bridge and I suddenly got reminded that I put this Partscaster together when I had no idea what I was doing. Not only does the pickup cavity itself look horrendous, I mean that's bad enough, but the cavity itself is too wide so that this narrower new bridge doesn't cover it all, so bits of a hole, bits of the cavity are sticking out of the sides if I were just to install this bridge as it is. I thought this was going to be a very simple bridge swap. It turns out it's going to be a lot of work. So here's the plan. I need to redo this cavity. First of all, I need to reroute it, clean it up so that there's some nice straight edges and I can get the shape as close to a rectangle as I can. Then I can get some extra bits of wood which I cut to size and shape, stick them on the sides of the cavity, basically giving myself more material, which I can then reroute into the correct size and shape for the cavity to fit this bridge here. So there's a fair bit to do on this thing. Let's get to work. So after removing all of the hardware, the pick guard and everything, it revealed this awful shielding work I did, so I had to scrape all of that off using scrapers, chisels, and eventually that did the trick. So I've just spent a long time scraping out all of the aluminium foil which I used as shielding, and during that process I realized this is going to be a much bigger job than I expected. Having done all of this now, scraping everything off, I'm going to need to refinish the whole guitar. And it's also highlighted other areas, other cavities and things that need rerouting and flattening out, like the neck pocket for example. So let's come back to the bridge cavity, because now that the aluminium foil is out, you can see the problem a lot clearer. So first of all, yeah, ugly socket, and this is my doing. I rerouted this, and I don't remember doing it, but I think it's because the bridge I was using is longer than a traditional bridge, which meant that the bridge pickup needed to be a bit further forward, and rather than buy a bridge that fits, I decided to just get my router and very roughly, without any template or anything, just try and make it a bit larger. So I'm going to correct my mistakes and learn from them, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to flatten it all out and then try and route out the whole cavity into a nice rectangle shape. So cutting out the wood and then shaping it to fit into that little pocket was actually pretty tricky. It took me about 3 attempts before I found anything that kind of fitted, and in the end I just had to kind of settle. So after all that, I've got these 4 bits of wood here, which I've labelled A for the top, B, 2, oops, and 1. So I know it's not the best fit in the world, there's a few gaps around the edges, but this is the best I can do. It took me quite a few attempts to even make one of these to fit, and this gap here I'm just going to have to fill it with either wood filler or super glue and sanding dust, and the whole guitar is going to be refinished anyway, so you're not even hopefully going to see that I've filled in these little bits. Hopefully at the end it's going to be a nice flat surface. So I just used some ordinary wood glue and put the blocks in place, and because it takes so long for that glue to dry, I thought I'd take this time to fill up the old holes in the body. So this is glued in nicely. What I'm going to move on to now, before I route out any hole and flatten everything out, is I'm going to correct the neck pocket because it's not flat and the lines aren't particularly straight, so I'm just going to do that again, do that a bit better with my router. I've got this little template here. So you can see how important that was to do, because the whole thing was painted white and I flattened it all out now, and you can see that there's a lower point right here in the end. So I'm going to route ever so slightly more so that I get a nice wooden surface everywhere, which means I've routed everything and it's all nice and flat. So I went over this 2 more times and I'm happy with this now. It's nice and flat. There's no bits of paint on the surface which suggests any low areas. So happy with how this went. Now I need to fix the whole body basically. So you can see this looks a bit ugly at the moment. I mean, it's not the best fit with all the bits of wood. I'm going to flatten this flush to the body and then take off the whole finish because the whole thing is going to be redone. So with my Celt Bander, as you saw, I removed all the finish from the top of the body. That was pretty successful, and it's also nicely flattened all of this out. That also, as you can see, gave me so much sanding dust that I was able to plug the holes. So now it's a nice flat surface. I'm really happy with this. I've got the sides to do and the back as well, but this thing is so loud that I'm going to give my neighbours a bit of a break and continue tomorrow. So far, so good. So as you can see here, the neck pocket is far too wide for the neck and it's not a nice tight fit. So I have these sheets of, I think it's maple veneer. I've used them on other builds as well as veneers, and so I cut them into shape, super glue them into place, and that was absolutely fine as a shim. Okay, now we have a tight fit. Can pick it up just from the neck pocket itself, nothing screwed in. Okay, now I've picked up the cavities nice and neat. I'm happy to move on to the next job, which is tidying up these cavities here. Now this control cavity is a bit of a mess. It's wider over here than it is down there. I don't remember doing this. I think this is how it came. I guess that's a risk you take when you order these cheap eBay or Amazon guitar bodies. The thing is, the template is just a completely different shape to the body itself. So if I line it up perfectly like this, the hole is in a completely different area. So I'm just going to have to line it up to where it is on the guitar body and do it from there. So about here, I'll glue the template down, use the router again. Pickup cavity. I love that you can see this. It's all going to be painted over, but I've left this alone because this doesn't matter so much to me. The neck pickup will fit easily in there, so that's not an issue. But this has been widened up. I'm going to need to plug these holes because you can see they're not in the center anymore, and drill some new ones. But after a quick sand, I think this will be ready to start finishing. Here I am applying the first coat of primer. It's a pretty light coat, so you can still see the wood through it. The second and third coat is where the real coverage came. I was trying to avoid some drips by doing it this way. So this is the next day, and I must say it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. There are some drips. There's one over here, over there as well. But the drips aren't a big deal because the next step now is to sand this down and flatten it out. So I'm going to use some 400. Hopefully that will get rid of the bumps or the drips. So I've gone over this now with 400 grit sandpaper, and it's nice and flat. It feels good. The front and back are okay. I mean, there's a little bit here where it looks like I went a bit too far, and here as well. But the main thing is over here. Now this is just the sides, but I want a nice even finish. I mean, there's nothing, I'm in no hurry for this project, so I'm going to try and take my time and improve my finishing skills a little bit. So I'm going to give it one more coat of primer before I move on to my finish. I ended up changing my spraying technique because it was a bit too difficult holding the guitar with one hand and spraying with the other. Doing it this way was a lot easier. It took longer because I was only doing one side at a time, but it was a lot more even coverage and less drips. 24 hours later now, I gave it a wet sand with some 800 grit paper so it's nice and smooth for applying the first coat of colour. I went for shell pink in the end, and I'm really glad I did because it looked great. So this is after 3 coats of pink, so it's had 4 coats of primer, 3 coats of pink. I'm going to give it a quick wet sand with 800 just to smoothen it out. There's a couple little dust particles around the edges, just a couple little bits that I can very carefully smoothen out. But I must say, this is such a nice finish. It's turning out really well. I'm really happy. So the main thing is to try and not ruin it. I've actually left this about 2 weeks since the last coat, and that's only because I've been so busy, but I'm sure that's only a good thing to let this dry completely. So I'm really happy with this. I gave it a very quick wet sand with some 800, and it's nice and flat. I'm going to go over it with some clear coat now. All in all, I ended up using about 1.5 cans of primer, 2 cans of colour and 2 cans of clear coat. And the technique I did was I would do 3 coats in one day and about 20 minutes apart. The next day, give it a wet sand and apply the next 3 coats. I then left it like this, hanging up for about 3 weeks to cure. And interestingly, over the course of that 3 weeks, it's as if the paint kind of sunk in a little bit, because in between 2 of the bits of wood I glued in, the gaps in between started to show, which previously it didn't. Moving on to the polishing process now, I wet sanded the clear coat starting with 800 grit, I then went to 1200 grit, and unfortunately that's where I stopped. Ideally I would have kept going all the way up to 2000, but I only had 1200 on me at the time. I ended up using this old furniture polish which I had lying around. I couldn't find my polishing compound, so I used this. It worked pretty well. It didn't give me a high gloss finish, but I think that's more because I didn't sand all the way up to 2000 grit. But rubbing this in with an old t-shirt did well to smoothen things out a little bit and give it a nice shine. Turned out not to be a simple bridge swap after all. Finally, this project is done. I started this in September, it's now December. Okay, I've also been super busy in the meantime, but I did not expect how much work was going to be involved in this thing. I'm so glad I put the work into it though. I was gonna say it feels like I've got my Tele back, but actually no, it doesn't. It's as if I swapped it for a different one. It does have the same tonal secret weapons as before, which is the 4-way selector switch, and also the push-pull control bypass mod. I have a step-by-step wiring video on that mod in case you're interested. So I say it's like I've got a different guitar. What actually is different? Well, for starters, the whole point of this video, the bridge. This is my first time using a traditional Tele style bridge with the 3 saddles and also the side wings that come up. I think it's called ashtray style. The thing I was worried about, which I think a lot of people are, is intonation, but I must say with these compensated saddles, it's absolutely fine. I haven't got it 100% pitch perfect, but honestly, it's good enough. I have absolutely no issues with it. I don't know how people manage with the non-compensated saddles. Obviously they do somehow, but I'm very happy I've got the compensated ones. I've not really noticed the side wings when I'm playing. It doesn't seem to get in the way for me. The only time it did, and the only time I've noticed that I thought, okay, I need to adapt a bit to this, is when I'm playing palm muty things, but this is a Tele, I'm hardly going to be playing metal on this thing. Now, I can't comment on whether the brass saddles have had any impact on tone at all, because I've changed the pickups, and that will obviously have a bigger influence. With the new color and the upgraded features like the tighter neck pocket, the neater routing job, the traditional bridge, I thought it's basically a different guitar now, so I wanted to try something different tonally as well. Now, if you've watched my vlog where I'm going through my old guitars and salvaging the pickups, you will have heard me playing through these pickups in a different guitar. In the bridge, it's the Seymour Duncan Hot Tele bridge, I think it's called, and it's the Twang King from DiMarzio in the neck. They sound fantastic together, and the middle position sounds awesome. This neck pickup, the Twang King, it's exactly what I want a neck pickup, a traditional neck pickup in a Tele to sound like. I'm really digging the tones. I also like a hotter bridge pickup in my guitars because I like to play riffs, I like to turn the gain up a little bit, and this is a really good one for that. I noticed it's very honky sounding, so I checked the Seymour Duncan website, and the tone chart has a huge mid hump, so that kind of explains it. It's a really cool pickup. It's not really your traditional Tele, it's kind of your traditional one with a bit extra juice. I think it's great. On to the finish now. I'm so happy with the color. Now, when I realized that I needed to refinish this guitar, I wasn't initially sure what color I wanted to go for, if I just wanted to top up with the white, because I do really like how it looked before, that white with the tortoiseshell pick guard. But I thought, no, I'm doing something new here. I'm gonna change the guitar basically. So needed a new color. And I went through the different color selections in my local hardware store. I found the pink and I thought, you know what? A shell pink Tele just sounds awesome, or looks awesome rather. I'm gonna go for that, and I'm so happy I did. The finished job which I did looks great at a distance. When you get up close, you can kind of see, okay, it's not factory finish. There's some of that, is it called orange peel effect, that kind of lumpiness, and that makes me realize, okay, I was a bit too cautious when I was sanding back the clear coat. I should have stayed with the 800 a little bit more, and I wish I went up to much higher grades. I think the highest I did was 1200 grit, which really isn't enough if you want a high gloss polish. So I did 1200 because that's all I could get, or that's all the shop had. I wish I had shopped further and got up to 2000 grit so I get a completely flat, shiny surface before polishing. Another thing I've learned is not to tape up the neck pocket completely to the edges, because when I peeled it away after I had done the whole finish, it kind of chipped a little bit, and here at the back of the neck pocket here, you can just see a couple of little chippings. So not a big deal, it's kind of at the back. It's where if I do go down here, my hand will be covering it anyway, but it's still something that's a bit annoying. So I'll play you out so you get a chance to hear this guitar, and I'll show you some B-roll, some close-up footage so you can get a nice close look at it as well. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this transformation process. If you did enjoy it, please do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button, drop me a comment below letting me know what you think of the guitar, and if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss my content in the future. Alright, that's all from me for now. Till next time.